Indiana basketball has entered the race for Flory Bidunga, one of the nation's top transfer portal targets. But will the Hoosiers pay what it takes?
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. It is the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your man, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you being here, making this your first listen or your first watch every single day. We appreciate you being here, making this your go-to spot for all things Indiana athletics, and a loaded show for you on this Monday. Indiana football spring practice continues, and man, everything we are seeing, hearing, and being told, it is intense. We'll talk about that. Plus, President Trump has signed an executive order. And no, we're not getting into politics, but we are going to talk about what it means for college athletics and why commissioners like Tony Petitti from the Big Ten have supported the executive order. We'll get to that in just a little bit. But Indiana basketball has now entered the race for Flory Bidunga. You've heard of it by now, or you know of him, but you've heard the news by now that the most sought-after, coveted transfer portal player, Flory Bidunga, is out there. He is going to be, my goodness, just sought after by every single program that needs a big like him, wants a big like him, and is looking to spend a little bit of cash. The announcement is that Flory Bidunga from Kansas, right, just completed his sophomore season. He has declared for the NBA draft while also keeping his college eligibility and is expected to enter the transfer portal. Now, we understand that it doesn't open until tomorrow, technically, right, with the paperwork and the things like that. But the growing feeling here is that Flory Bidunga will be in the transfer portal and that he will be one of, if not the top target for a lot of big name schools. And of course, as it is with every big name player that enters or announces their intention to enter, right, and a bunch of Indiana people say, are the Hoosiers going to make a move? Are the Hoosiers going to go after him? Can Indiana afford it? And those are all legitimate questions. But I'm here to tell you that, yes, Indiana is interested here. He's one of the nation's best players, okay? He was a big piece of that Kansas squad, one who obviously highly recruited coming in, originally from Congo, came in, averaged 13 points this past season, top 30 rebounder in the country with 9 a game. He also shot it at 64% from the floor. This dude is an athletic freak. He's 6'10", 235, and when he wants to be, he's a dominant force. And notice how I said that, because that is something that concerns me, okay, with Flory Bidunga. I watched a lot of Kansas basketball, right? The Big 12 plays on that Monday night, and they have a lot of their games kind of isolated from the Big 10 or the SEC or whatever. So I find myself seeing a lot of Kansas basketball this past season, and the way that I said that is the way that I meant that. When Flory Bidunga wants to be dominant, he is. But there are a lot of instances where he doesn't do a whole lot. Rebounding the basketball, that's pretty consistent. Again, averaging 9 a game, you don't fake that. But in terms of his scoring ability, right? It's whether he is aggressive and gets the opportunities and then takes those opportunities that I'm a little iffy on him in that regard. But this is a very good player. Do not get me wrong on that. And Indiana will do their due diligence in this scenario. Now, so will literally every other school in America. Okay, because he's one of the most talented, productive forwards in the transfer portal and one of the highest ranked guys we've seen in a long, long time, and someone that is this good. His camp knows it too. And that's the problem with Flory Bidunga, because I think Indiana wants him and Indiana would love to have him, and Indiana would be so much better next year with Flory Bidunga in Bloomington. But here's the problem, right? It's not about how much can you play me? It's also about how much can you pay me? Folks, there's a reason he's leaving Kansas. He's leaving Kansas because the Jayhawks aren't going to pay him what he wants to be paid anymore. His demands in NIL funding are off the charts. Unbelievable. Remember us talking back during football season in that transfer portal about, I don't know, Brendan Sorsby from Cincinnati, right? Who's getting paid $5 million a year for 1 year at Texas Tech to be a quarterback. Imagine that amount or that type of money in that same vicinity for a basketball player for 1 year, right? It's not just a guaranteed 1 year. Sorsby only has the 1 year of eligibility. Bidunga could play longer, but he's already considered a middle of the pack second round pick in the NBA draft. He will be even higher than that this time next year. You're talking $4+ million for 1 year for this guy to step in and be on your basketball team. That's a lot of money, man. That's a lot of money to pay for one player in college basketball. Do you understand that $4 million? There's a lot of power conference schools that don't have $4 million to spend on the roster, much less on one player. Right now, Indiana's in a better position than that, and you're okay to go spend money. But the conversation now has to be had of, do we spend $4.5 million on one player, whether it's Bidunga or somebody else? Or do we split that money and go get 2, 3, or 4 good players? Maybe not as good as he is, but 2 or 3 that are pretty darn good themselves and have more options and have more bodies. Those are the conversations that Indiana's going to be having right now. And thankfully, with Carr now in there trying to help Darren DeVries make these decisions, right? That's why you bring somebody in like that. But my goodness, with Flory Bidunga, I mean, he's uber talented. And again, you demand that type of money because you know it. Again, one of the nation's best rebounders, one of the most efficient scorers, and somebody who can play that true big spot. And no, he's not a 7-foot center, but he's a power forward through and through. Somebody that you give the basketball to down low and just get out of the way. Just let him go to work. That's what he is able to do. How does that fit in the Darren DeVries system? I think it would fit well. I think he's a player that you build around and you change your system based off of that, right? Rather than just getting up and down the floor and hauling you know what and trying to put up 80 shots a game, you would work the clock a little bit more and you would have a true big who is aggressive with the basketball, unlike the 2 we saw this past season. And he makes you instantly a better basketball team on both ends of the floor. So Indiana is in the race. They're in the mix, but this is just as much of a conversation for Flory Bidunga and his camp to go to Indiana as much as it is for Indiana and our camp to see if we want to go for Flory Bidunga full on, right? In terms of the money and the availability and things like that. And so we will continue to update you and talk about this process again with the portal officially opening tomorrow. This is long from over. And unfortunately, it could come down to the highest bidder. And it's like an eBay item, right? You want to sell it for $5, so you start it at $1, then it goes to $2, then it goes to $4. Then somebody says, hey, I'll offer you $6 for it. And you're like, all right, cool. Let's sit back and relax and see where this thing goes. That could absolutely happen with Flory Bidunga. So Indiana will stay in it as long as they feel is necessary, but they will not overpay for him or anybody in the transfer portal. All right, coming up here on Locked On Hoosiers, we will flip to football, yes, but more so college athletics as a whole. The president of the United States has stepped in and is trying to fix college athletics. We talk about what he did and why it's important for Indiana in the Big Ten right after this on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Wayfair. Way Day is here, and if you've been thinking about upgrading your space, this is the time to do it. We're talking about some of the best deals of the year on furniture, decor, outdoor essentials, everything you need to refresh your home. During Way Day, Wayfair is offering up to 80% off with fast and free shipping on everything, making it easy to find pieces that fit your style and your budget. it's super easy, right, to filter things by the style, by their size, by their price. So you're not wasting time scrolling for hours trying to find the one perfect thing. You can narrow it down and look at all of your great options. And the reviews and the photos on their website really help you feel confident in what you're getting. So whether it's upgrading a room, adding outdoor pieces, or just finding something that ties your space together, it makes the whole process simple from start to finish. Wayday is the sale to shop the best deals in home. We're talking up to 80% off with fast and free shipping on everything. Head to wayfair.com April 25th through April 27th to shop Wayday. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. All right, welcome back into Locked On Hoosiers. Appreciate you being here, making this your go-to spot for all things Indiana athletics. And if that's the case, if you need a little bit more, if you want a little bit more access to what I've got going on, to what we've got going on, what Locked On has going on, because we're the nation's #1 sports podcasting network, in case you didn't know, you can pay just $5 a month. That's it, $5 a month. Name me things that you can buy for a $5 bill nowadays. Not coffee, not food, bottles of water, even rare, right? $5 a month doesn't get you very far. It does with Locked On in our Everydayer Club, because if you do so by using the code March right now, okay, you get your first month free, but the rest of the way, $5 a month, you're going to get this show's audio version ad-free, delivered straight to you every single day. You're also going to get access to our private group chats that we have going on with the host and other everydayers and things like that in our Discord servers, plus a lot of cool access to some other things down the line like merch and things like that. So for $5 a month, go to lockedonpodcast.com/everydayer and you can become a part of the Locked On Hoosiers Everydayer Club. And if you use the code March right now, you get your first month free, and then it's $5 a month the rest of the way. All right, we continue on talking Indiana athletics, and this one more so with the Big 12. And I want to put this on the forefront, as I did in the open of the show, and I want to do it at the open of this segment. By no means am I going any political route here. I don't want to talk politics. I don't care to talk politics. I don't care who you voted for, why you voted for, what you support, what you don't support. I don't care. I really don't. And I'm not going to tell you what I do, because that's not what this is about. This is about the President of the United States, who sat down and signed an executive order, which is a big deal, by the way, in case you're not really in tune with politics and government and things like that. Executive orders are a big deal. It takes a lot of work to get one of these bad babies put together, and the President of the United States to sit down and sign it. But that's exactly what President Trump did. And basically, what it's doing is forcing the NCAA to make a decision. It's trying to have schools under the supervision of the NCAA have their funding restricted, fixing the transfer portal rules, trying to limit it to 1 total transfer, having 5 total years of eligibility, right? And they're trying to have federal agencies be able to step in and execute a lot of these things, and also put a major dampen on pay for play, NIL, and recruiting and things like that. So on the front, right, or I guess on the cusp of all of this, it's a good thing what the president did here. He's trying to fix college athletics, as are a lot of people, okay? And I think we can all agree that there are major issues in college athletics. NIL has gotten completely out of hand. We just talked about a guy who's demanding $4 million plus, right, of NIL money. That's absurd. We also have guys who are playing their 8th, 9th, and 10th years of college football at their 8th, 9th, and 10th different school. That's ridiculous. That needs to come to an end. And there is really no set limit or rule or boundary on any of this. And that's what people in power are trying to fix right now. And again, you can have your opinion on whether the federal government needs to get involved here, right? That should tell you how bad we're in, how bad of a situation this is. But I really find it interesting that the major conference commissioners all released a statement separately in support of the executive order. Tony Petitti, the commissioner of the Big Ten, said this, quote, "The Big Ten Conference would like to thank President Trump for his leadership and continuing efforts to protect college athletics and joins him in urging Congress to quickly pass legislation addressing the critical issues undermining its long-term stability." He goes on to say, consistent with President Trump's executive order, the Bipartisan SCORE Act thoughtfully addresses name, image, and likeness for student athletes, protecting academic and athletic opportunities provided through women's and Olympic sports programs, and expands resources to support student athletes on and off the field. The final sentence says, "We will continue to work with the broad coalition of college sports stakeholders and members of Congress to enact this legislation," end quote. Greg Sankey from the SEC had a quote out, or a statement out there. Brett Yormark from the Big 12 made a quote, and they all say pretty much the same. They support it, they're happy about it, and they're going to do whatever it takes to get this thing fixed. I don't know what the ultimate fix looks like. Okay, I don't know who the ultimate decision maker or I guess executor or executioner is. I don't know if I said that right, but basically, who's going to be the final one that says, this is what we're doing, this is how it's going to be. And with how everything operates, it can't just be one person, right? So even though the president of the United States sat down and said, hey, we're going to fix college athletics, this is what we're going to ask you to do, it's my understanding that the NCAA doesn't have to listen to that. They have the ruling of a lot of these local courts and things to where they don't have to act upon this, and certain schools, or I guess all these schools, right, don't have to abide by this yet. But again, I can't stress enough the idea that the president of the United States and the federal government are stepping in to say, hey, man, hey, we've noticed here in Washington, college sports are kind of out of hand. We got dudes making more money than they know what to do with. We've got guys and girls and people transferring all over the place, and there are absolutely no rules here. Something has to change. And then you get into the debate, and we won't do it so much on this show today, but the idea of how many times can you transfer, right? I think one is fair. Then you have the sitting out rule, right? Which used to be a thing. Let's not forget that. You used to be able to have the one free transfer, and then you'd have to sit out a year and things. I think that makes sense, right? Everybody deserves a chance to move and go somewhere else. But if you want to do it multiple times, sorry, you're going to have to be punished for that. You can't just move willy-nilly and expect no repercussions, because that's what it is right now. Then there's also the debate of, okay, how many years of eligibility do you get? Because we're way past exhausted of these conversations of, well, I have an extra year, but I could have another year because I actually played D3 baseball over here, but that should count for my D1 power conference baseball eligibility. Well, I actually played overseas, and so that I'm just exhausted, right? We've got dudes entering the transfer portal for college basketball right now, and we don't know what their eligibility is. We have dudes who are entering the transfer portal who don't have eligibility right now and are applying or suing or pushing back to try and get an extra year of eligibility. And so they're just sitting in limbo and waiting for that decision. That's where a lot of this is going to come from too. And hopefully a lot of this gets solved. And the executive order is just kind of kicking all this into high gear, if you will. And so, again, those are conversations we can have at a later tape. I like 5 years to complete 5, or even 5 years to complete 4, really, whatever the case may be. I'm just tired of watching dudes. Yep, this is my 7th year of college football because, I got 2 medical red shirts and I only played a game over here, and then I dropped out of school over here and walked on over there. And I'm tired of that. And clearly the government is too. Clearly the athletic directors are, the commissioners are, and the people at the top are going to try and get this thing fixed. And we'll see what comes of the executive order. But fascinating stuff. That was on Friday, I believe, Friday afternoon, Friday evening. And so we'll see what happens. And hopefully we can fix the future of college athletics. All right, coming up in our final segment of Locked On Hoosiers, we'll bring it back to Indiana football in particular because spring practice continues to happen here in Bloomington. And everything I see and hear and being told, it is intense. We talk about that in our final segment next. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by TurboTax. It is tax time, but for a lot of us, the old way of doing taxes is a lot. Trying to book an appointment that's not the most convenient, sitting in a waiting room with a stack of papers, emailing back and forth, and wondering if they really get your situation. But this year, you're getting a major upgrade. Intuit TurboTax now has in-person locations nationwide. You can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents get uploaded straight to your TurboTax app on the spot. And just like that, you're done. Your TurboTax expert works to get you every dollar that you deserve while you get real-time notifications as you go about your day. It's the relief of walking in and meeting a real person and walking out knowing that your taxes are being handled right. Head to turbotax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment today. All right, final segment here on today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers. Again, thank you so much for being here. Make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel if you have not already. Drop your thoughts in the YouTube comments below. We love to see your engagement. Also helps the show grow tremendously fast, so thank you for that. And send this to all your friends, your family, your coworkers, your dentist if they're an IU fan. I don't care. As long as somebody is an Indiana fan, they need to be watching and listening to this show. So thank you so much for that. And for all of our audio listeners as well, if you follow us, turn on those notifications as well. And man, I've said this, and we said it leading into the start of spring practice, but I'm so glad football's back. Man, I'm so glad that Indiana football is back out on the field, working in the facility, working in the stadium, getting back in action. And everything looks very clean so far. Curt Cignetti has changed very little about the routine and the consistency and the trends and the day-to-day, right? Very little has changed from a year ago to this year. And you would expect nothing less from a guy who's been doing this for a long, long time, but is also coming off of winning a national championship. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Now, you do need to change some things here and there. You don't want to be complacent, and it wasn't perfect a year ago, I'm sure, but even with an influx of new players, with the transfer portal and with high school recruits, it just looks flawless, man. Everything we get to see just looks so smooth, so clean, so good. And I'm not just talking about a highlight of Josh Hoover throwing the football over the middle. I'm talking everything. All the drills, everything we see is clean, but it's also intense. And that's one thing about this Indiana team and really this Indiana program that people don't talk about enough is the meanness and the grittiness and just the grind that these guys go through. They reprogram their brains, man. Like they come to Indiana and they leave here just attackers and grown men. And that's how you win national championships. And I'm telling you, that's going to carry into the NFL as well. And that'll make Indiana a destination location. I've said that several times. Keep that in mind. That will make Indiana a destination location for high school recruits and also for NFL GMs to go get players for their teams. And that has continued in this season's spring practice. Now, there is some film out there of Josh Hoover, and the dude just looks insane. There was the one clip of the little out route of him to Charlie Becker with the toe tap for Becker, right, falling out of bounds, and just sums up everything that Indiana did last year. And Charlie Becker will be in that fold again at the receiver position. I watched some film of the corners the other day who are just aggressive on the football. They're physical at attack. They're coming up and making plays and making tackles with their hands and their arms. I mean, this team and this program is already the upper echelon of standard, the upper echelon of what you want to be a part of, right? And it's simple. If you show up and you're not ready, we saw this with Nick Marsh, right, on day one. If you show up and you're not ready to work, get out. Curt Cignetti doesn't want you. He doesn't care. He will move on to somebody else, and that's how you continue to compete and win national championships, and I love it. And so there's a lot of good things from spring practice right now. We've got one, I believe, sit down and talk with Curt Cignetti so far. The one where he backed up Josh Hoover, talked about the running backs a little bit, defensive line. Again, that edge position is going to be so filthy. And I'm curious on what the rotation will be on the interior defensive line. Ton of linebacker work as well, which they look really good too. And just really have been impressed with what we've seen so far for Indiana in spring practice. So several more weeks to go. Again, the Hoosiers were very, very late getting started compared to some others. But when you're playing in late January, then you go on a trophy tour, you've got other things going on before you get spring practice underway. But spring game will be in a couple of weeks, and then you'll have summer workouts. Remember, no spring portal, so you don't have to worry about that. And then we'll have fall practice. That will be here before you know it. All right, don't get discouraged when spring ball is over and we have to work through the summer and don't have any practices or film or anything to talk about. I promise you, fall practice will be here before you know it, and so will the start of the season. And so I'm excited for Indiana football. I know you're excited for Indiana football too. And if you are, this is the place you need to be, is Locked On Hoosiers again. So please subscribe to the channel. Follow us on your audio podcasting platform. Send this off to everybody you know. We're having a ton of fun talking football, basketball, transfer portal, top storylines, Big Ten storylines, you name it. We've got it every single day for you here on Locked On Hoosiers, okay? We are back tomorrow, Hoosier fans, for another episode. So until then, stay safe, and I'll talk to you later.